have such sights to show you.
We're Poppin the Scary horror podcast here. I'm your host Coale, and with me on this episode as always, I have my good friend and co-host Aaron. So, this episode is actually going to start out a little bit differently. So, as you may know from the last episode we released, we were going to talk about The Exorcist today. And we still are, trust me. But this is actually me well after Aaron and I have seen The Exorcist. And you may be wondering, well, why are we recording the intro, and especially without Aaron? Well, as you could probably guess by now, I don't have the intro. It was so weird because I remember distinctly recording the intro with Aaron, but the only audio track that was there where the intro was, or should have been, was actually this audio track. We're popping this.
I told you to get you back. God dang it. I told you I was going to yell.
Yeah, so because of that, I am going to re-record an intro and try to give the spark notes of what I remember us talking about during the intro for The Exorcist whenever we initially did. So, with The Exorcist, Aaron and I were both pretty nervous overall with it specifically, just because of the fact that it does focus on exorcism, which is one of those weird horror things and stuff specifically, because it deals with the supernatural, but it's also hitting pretty close to home specifically as well. It's like one of those things that, you know, with demons and possessions and that sort of stuff, it's just kind of like that ethereal sort of creepiness that hits a little too close to home, in my professional opinion. Like, there's something more deeply disturbing to me about that, as opposed to seeing a killer run around hacking up teenagers and whatnot. And I know Aaron was kind of under a similar circumstance overall as well, because I know he was also raised in a pretty religious household, and so he had a crucifix on his bedside there, and he especially held on to that whenever he watched M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense, because it scared the living daylights out of him. And I'm not making fun of him for being definitely a little scared of this film, because to be honest, I had never seen The Exorcist before. It's one of those things that I knew about it, I heard about it, and I was always pretty nervous and scared about it. In fact, one of the biggest scares that still kind of traumatizes me a little bit, I've gotten over it for the most part, but it was that scary maze game where you had to drag the little dot mouse through the maze specifically, and the first two levels are pretty easy overall, and then it gets to a third level where it's like a really narrow hallway and stuff, and then as you're focusing in, trying to make sure you don't hit the edge, the speakers were on blast, just because I wasn't prepared for it, and Reagan from The Exorcist, where she's all possessed and jacked up, pops up with this horrible compressed screaming that just shoots through, and even thinking about it right now and stuff kind of gives me chills running down my spine. I mean, that just takes up residence in my mind. So definitely having that permeated into my skull, I was definitely nervous kind of going to watch The Exorcist. And it was kind of funny because we ended up meeting on a Sunday evening as well. So it was definitely thematical as well for fitting in within the element. But I mean, aside from that, I mean, The Exorcist is just one of those things that I feel like as a horror fan especially, I needed to watch. And of course, just bringing Aaron along with me, I figured might as well bring him along as well, just to experience this film to see how exactly it stands. People proclaim it as one of the best horror films of all time, and especially one of the most impactful. So, I'm pretty sure I hit all the spark notes there. I'm sure there was a lot of more jokes thrown around, like Aaron and I usually bat towards each other. But aside from that, I hope you all enjoy our review of William Friedkin's 1973's The Exorcist. We have just gotten back from watching The Exorcist.
Uh-huh.
How are your loins, Aaron?
They're long since girded.
I was expecting that answer.
They are unsoiled.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as scary as I thought.
No,
the whole thing was creepy, but there was nothing like. For some reason, I thought there was going to be a jump scare or two in there. There wasn't, but...
No, I'm kind of the same way. Like, at the beginning of the film, I'm, like, kind of clinched a little bit. Like, okay, all right, it's coming up. It's coming up. And then even whenever they would have, like, little tidbits and stuff, they're more so disturbing than it was, like, actually, like, frightening to the core.
Right.
Because I wasn't expecting, jump scares like, oh, I'm going to get you. But I was expecting something to be a lot more unsettling.
Yeah, like, even just cinemagraphically, like with the shots, I thought suddenly they just cut to a shot of her like sitting up in the bed, like
yeah,
and it would get me, but there wasn't even any of that.
No, it was definitely surprising, and so that's our initial thoughts there. That surprisingly we weren't we didn't have a heart attack.
I didn't poop my pants.
No sort of number 2s or number 1 slipped out during the showing of The Exorcist.
I didn't say anything about number 1s. I might have pissed my pants a little bit.
Oh, okay. Well, I
just
see.
A
little dribble.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just a little dribble.
Just a little dribble ass up.
So, I guess before diving into our each categories, quick overview of The Exorcist for those that are unaware. So the whole gist of The Exorcist is that it does focus on this young girl named Reagan, and basically her mom, who's like a movie actress. Whenever she's at home, she starts to notice Reagan isn't acting quite normal and stuff, and so I know this probably isn't a spoiler alert given that's in the title of the movie, but after they try to do like a series of tests, figure out what's wrong with her, like mentally and stuff, it leads them to instead consult an exorcist, since they feel like this is an issue that only they can resolve there, which we kind of knew it was coming, like just based on it being The Exorcist there, but I mean, that's pretty much the overall view, I'd probably say, of the movie specifically. They do throw in, like, small tidbits of, like, journeying to Iraq on an archaeological dig site and stuff.
Yeah, the beginning,
sprinkled in.
It's definitely like a braided storyline that all comes together in the end, and they, like, kind of give you each strand at the beginning, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense until they, like, weave it together for you at the end. But
yeah, no, it's definitely a very... I would say kind of straightforward, kind of not straightforward narrative there.
Yeah. I mean, they come together fairly quickly, but they're like, here's the part in Iraq, and then here's this priest guy, and then here's this woman and her child, and like none of them meet until like close to halfway through the movie.
Yeah,
and then it's like, okay, now I get it. Now we're in action. But
absolutely. And so, story-wise, I felt like, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. Like, it's just it's always interesting kind of viewing it, because it's not like a crazy intricate plot with like multiple levels and stuff
they're not
like
trying
that.
to like solve a mystery really. I mean, she's wondering what the hell's wrong with her daughter, but yeah, like you, the viewer, everybody knows it's a demon that she just has to exhaust the options until that point that it's like, okay, she's possessed by something. So they're not trying to like figure out like, what's the mystery behind this? More of like, how do I get this thing out of my top?
Yeah, that was kind of the interesting thing with the narrative, because really the exorcism itself doesn't happen until much later in the movie than what I was expecting. And then there's like a whole bunch of other stuff that is thrown into the movie, and you're not sure how much it plays into the story at all. Like they'll throw out like, oh, hey, this thing's going on.
Right.
But that's it. It's pretty much the end of it specifically there. So I was kind of surprised that there wasn't like a grandiose build up at the end. Like I feel like it was pretty on the same level and stuff. And I know we've kind of mentioned this already, but I know both of our concerns going into it is like, you know, we've heard from people like, oh man, this is the scariest movie of all time, like everything. And obviously, don't know if this is spoiler too much, but I was kind of genuinely surprised I didn't really get scared too much.
Yeah, like there's definitely moments where I was like bracing myself to be scared, and then it didn't come, which I think is to the movie's credit in my mind, I guess, that they were consistent throughout. There wasn't even just one part where they were like, "I'm gonna jump scare you," boo. You know,
Yeah.
it didn't seem like the point of this movie was necessarily to elicit a bodily response, more so than it was to just like show this deeply disturbing, creepy sort of thing that happened.
Yeah, and that's kind of the interesting thing, because I remember seeing an article that started circulating that William Friedkin, the guy who made The Exorcist, doesn't claim this as a horror movie at all, which at first, kind of hearing that, I'm like, well, that's preposterous. You know, I've heard it's like the scariest movie ever there, and they have stuff there, but after having watched the film, I could kind of understand the angle he's going at. I mean,
yeah, like we have like a little bit of a broader like definition of horror, I think, on this podcast, where it's like scary and things that sort of follow that sort of genre line. But this really doesn't conform to the genres of horror, I think. You know, they're like the genre tropes of like, when you walk through this, there aren't the jump scares. You know, it doesn't feel like the movie is trying to scare you so much as it's trying to tell you a story that happens to be scary.
No, that's what I can see. Which, even though I don't think like the film is scary, I can understand why people categorize it as horror, because there's a lot of moments that even just it's hard to explain. On it's mostly disturbing, I would say, and unsettling. I mean, there's like a lot of stuff that happens to the girl Reagan in the film that, you know, I'm just it was very hard for me to kind of digest and stuff. Definitely hits that note. So it's scary in a sense, yes, and I definitely think it fits into the horror genre. But then, like, those moments, like, are kind of brief.
Yeah.
Because it's really slow paced and, like, kind of really more ambient kind of going through. Like, you follow a lot of the characters through their normal life as they're trying to process what's going on in their own lives specifically and how it all plays out. But then it just starts to sprinkle in, like, those moments of unsettledy, and I mean, those scenes will definitely stick out, which maybe we'll talk more in spoiler territory, but there's definitely a couple of scenes that I can understand, like, if you watched it as a younger child, it could definitely traumatize you.
Yeah. For sure. And I think it's interesting, they do sort of play all these points, and they just let them play out naturally, like it is in real life, you know. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that, like, a person or two dies, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the main plot of The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Until later on, you realize, okay, there's like a tie-in of some sort, of like why they would show that, or why they would put that in the story.
No,
and
for
then
sure.
You're like, oh, you know. So.
But that's pretty much like how I felt on the scare factor and stuff specifically. But I guess we probably should also dive more into the characters. I guess we might as well start with the titular character, Reagan herself, since she is kind of one of the more focal points, even though you don't get to spend as much time with her as you do, like, with the mom and then Father Damien. But I gotta be honest, Linda Blair, who played Reagan, I was very impressed by her acting skills. I mean,
I assume that's her in the makeup and everything the whole time. It's crazy. She's playing multiple characters, you know what I mean, because she's playing like herself and then herself possessed, and it's like, it's pretty nutty what she did. I was very much impressed, kind of how she has to kind of go through the motions of acting like a normal girl at the beginning and everything, and then dealing with like this horrible trauma to go on specifically, and then just slowly, as you know, she's being more and more possessed, having to make that transition. Obviously, whenever you get towards later in the film, as she starts talking, there's other voices layered on top of it. But I mean, just the physicality of her acting and everything, like, I bought it. I bought it completely that she was being possessed. So I mean, there's like
major brownie points for Linda Blair for a great performance.
Yeah, and it's crazy because there are moments in the film where you could tell they had to like redo the audio and dub it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, and it's not good.
No,
there's like one moment in particular where it's like that's a terrible dub. But like all the moments with Linda, like playing Reagan as with all these demons speaking through her, whatever. I mean, it looks like she's talking as this you don't have that little thing in your brain where you're like, this is a dub. It's like that's a demon child.
No, it's definitely like there's definitely a lot of moments where the lip sync did not add up, but whenever it does, it hit home. Like you just believed that she was singing that. So I have nothing but highest praise, and I think it's definitely one of the best performances in any horror film period that I've seen. The one where I just bought her act and stuff.
One of the best just child acting
oh my
performances
gosh
I've
for
seen.
sure.
I mean, I don't know how old Linda was as playing this 12-year-old Reagan, but she looked like a 12-year-old, you know.
Oh my gosh,
And that's an incredible feat of acting for someone that young.
Let's see, she was born in 59, came out in 73, so she must have been like around Reagan's actual age. I would say probably 14 15
max.
yeah, around there. So again, for a 14-year-old actress, like really good. Like I mean, I think she definitely deserves the spotlight whenever it comes to the Exorcist, which is crazy to think about because looking at her wiki and stuff, she's actually 63 years old. So it's crazy to think this film came out like 50
she
years
really
ago.
looked 12. She was 63. Incredible.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going for. But yeah, definitely I think she's the star of the show overall. But there is like good supporting actors, I believe, also. Like her mom, Chris McNeil. I definitely kind of bought her distress, and I was happy that she was not afraid to show more anger in her performance and stuff, because I feel like sometimes whenever it comes to like a woman dealing with trauma and stuff like that, it's kind of more minute. So it's good to see a take like this where she's like getting visibly angry that nobody's able to give her a straight answer on what's going on. And I think kind of having the focus be on her also experience it is great. So I think she's definitely a great character to have in this sort of story. And she doesn't feel underbaked as a character. You feel like she's a strong woman who's trying to help raise her kid by herself while also being like a movie actress stuff specifically there. And she's definitely like, you could tell she really wants to help her daughter out specifically. It doesn't feel like, oh no, minor inconvenience. So I could definitely appreciate Ellen Burstyn, by the way, that's the actress's name, performance as Chris. But I feel like even though she did a good performance, I felt like Jason Miller's character, Father Damien, such a good character, just to have like a priest figure who almost doesn't believe in his own faith and stuff. Like he has like a moment early in the movie where he's like, I think I'm losing my religion. And then it's like, this is the guy that has to do the Exorcist. No, exactly. And so I feel like having a character like that, as opposed to just, you know, a priest who's fully confident in everything, kind of makes it a lot more harrowing of a journey for him specifically, that he has to help in a realm that he's not even fully like 100% in, because even whenever he is asked and stuff, he's like, oh well, you know, psychologically speaking, like he's more quickly to jump to that as opposed to more spiritual reasoning, which is background. They say in the movie is like he was a priest, and then they like sent him to like psychology school, so like he went to like Yale, and then they went to John Hopkins Medical or whatever, so he's like super duper educated as a psychiatrist, and then but he's supposed to be like the psychiatrist for the church people, and like listening to all these church people like oh my god, their psychology problems is like driving him up a wall apparently. So yeah, that's sort of the state that he's in, and then he has some issues with his elderly mother that's in a deteriorating state. So like he's not doing well by the time he reaches Reagan. And so that's an interesting sort of conflict that gets like
pulled upon by the exorcism process.
No, I think it was definitely a great choice to have it be like that specifically, as opposed to a priest who believes 100% in everything.
Right.
You know, I think it would make it a less interesting film overall if it's just fully 100% confident priest and everything. I think it's more interesting that it's like he's dealing with the situation, but yet you don't feel like he's kind of like the number one guy to do it.
Right.
And there are other supporting actors and actresses, but I can't really say that they left like a definitive kind of impression on me. I mean, there is like Max von Sydow who played
yeah, he was in the very beginning, right, in Iraq.
yes
Which,
that
can
was
I
him.
just say, it's so nice to open a film on northern Iraq, and they have the music playing, and they're in the markets, and yada yada, and nothing about the plot has anything to do with Islamic terrorism.
Yeah.
So nice to watch a movie set in the Middle East for some part of it, and there's just no mention of terror. I love movies filmed before the Gulf War in Iraq.
Yeah. Oh my god. I feel like his performance, like, you don't get to see too much of it, but you know, he does good for the role and stuff. And then there's the lieutenant kind of investigating everything going around.
I like that guy. I feel like he didn't have that big of a role. Like he was just like randomly in spots, but I liked him.
Yeah. No, I think he definitely did well. Lee J. Cobb, I believe it was, playing Lieutenant William. I felt like he did really good as the role, but again, you don't get to see him too much because I would say it probably focuses on Damien, Chris, and Reagan for the most part. And I mean, I definitely would have not changed it otherwise because it was definitely important that they focus on Reagan because she is the plot overall of what's going on. So character-wise, you know, I feel like they're really good, but again, Reagan kind of steals the show for me. Just Linda Blair knocked it out of the park there.
Yeah.
One other thing that's a big kind of notice with The Exorcist is the practical effects that they did.
Yeah. That shit must have been bonkers in the 70s. I mean, come on. How do you do that shit?
No, I mean, there's definitely some effects that have definitely not aged too well. It's pretty shoddy, especially like spinning heads and everything.
I thought that was still funny.
Oh yeah, no, for sure, but
I enjoyed it. The head spinning and the barfing and the
oh yeah, like the Nickelodeon slime colored
barf. And all the like furniture moving and there's some like flashes of spooky faces. I don't know.
No, it definitely works still. It definitely wasn't one of those like, oh man, this is like bad practical effects. Like it was definitely good, and I feel like since the movie doesn't use it too much, it also is just kind of more surprising. But like the things that were stand out for me is like floating whenever you see her float, and then the face makeup, just like how her face is horribly decay and everything. Like it's definitely disturbing, and it just leaves an impact on your mind,
right? And even just like the bruising and stuff of like afterwards with what was the mother's name again?
Chris,
like whenever she gets slashed up and stuff, and and then just like, you know, she's walking around with sunglasses for a day or whatever. Just even that's like subtle, like I feel like the makeup department was on full blast for this whole movie.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess this is kind of an interesting fact. There's actually a documentary about this, specifically on Shudder, about the making of this film, that apparently there's a lot of cursed stuff that happened during the making of this film. So if it just added to the overall kind of cursed nature of it overall, I definitely think it's interesting, and I've been wanting to watch it, but I've been having to hold off specifically on it. But
watch the movie first.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, overall, I would say the effects hold up pretty well. Even though some scenes, like the bed shaking, it's like you know how they're doing it, and some angles don't look quite as convincing as other ones.
I think it all stands up though pretty well, honestly.
Oh yeah,
I think it does.
No, it doesn't take me out of the film and stuff. It's just one of those things, like just thinking about it, I'm like, okay. But overall, the effects, I would say, are done well, so it definitely makes it an enjoyable watch. And I would probably say the other thing that I am a fan of is the music. Granted, there's not a lot of music used for the film, and it's mostly kind of tubular bells. That's the name of the song. That's like...
Yeah, and they kind of sprinkle that in weird parts, honestly. I do think they did a good job of, like, just ambient noise. There's a lot of, like, noise in this movie, like, to sort of fill the mood in the background.
Yeah, and I think that was a smart choice on their part, just because I feel like whenever it came to, like, Reagan herself being possessed, it would make it less scary, I think, if they did rely too much on a heavy orchestral sound, kind of.
Right. It was much more disturbing or, like, unsettling than, you know, have them talking up, like, downstairs, and you just hear the faint upstairs of, like, the bed slamming against the floor and just like, whoa!
Yeah, just like all the voices you hear and stuff. It was definitely unnerving at a lot of points, but not to the point where it was horrifying by any means, but definitely unnerving. I think that's the best way to describe it overall. Were there any other points that you felt like you wanted to hit home with this movie or anything, Aaron?
I just want to say that the Catholic Church...
Oh, no. Cut the line! Cut the line!
No, I think...
Where's the stop button? The Catholics are gonna come after us!
I love the aesthetic of Catholic Church in scary movies because the Catholic Church is just like, it's like the battle of the occult. You know what I mean? There's like the institutionalized religious occult versus like these demons or whatever. It's so dope, and they all dress like the royal guard from Star Wars, you know, or like Father Damien was dressed like fucking Neo for most of this movie, and like there was even scenes of him training, like he's gonna beat the demon out of her, you know what I mean?
I forgot about that.
He's he had like a training arc before he even knew what he was training for. I just love the church in these. They've got all kinds of gadgets. They're like throwing water that's special water, and they've got cool books they can read. And even in just being in the church, there was like that weird scene with the statue, and there was like horns coming out of it or whatever. I don't know what that scene was about, where he walked in and he's like, "Oh gosh, this statue's been stabbed" or something. But even the fact that there's just all these statues and like altars, and they got costumes. The Catholic Church is cool. It's like a group of religious extremists that's been around for hundreds of years. You can cancel me, but it's cool. It's like what happens when religious extremism becomes mainstream.
Oh, not gonna lie, I didn't know what the heck you were going to say, and I know I have the power to edit these episodes, but I was afraid. I was like, oh no.
Why? You want to think I'm gonna expose some big Catholic secrets?
Yes.
Do you know they diddle kids? No, that's not the scary things I'm talking about with Catholics these days. But I do think it's cool. The part of the world they're in and the time period they're in, too. Of course, this is like pre-kid diddling scandals. Or at least big, you know, like, they were still covering it up at this point pretty well. But like being in the Northeast, they're in Washington, right? And, right? Washington, D.C.? Yeah, in Georgetown. And, being in that part of the world, like the Catholic Church is like an institution. So like when they're going to like, you know, they're going to the fathers, they're like, these are people that are revered in the community that are like, you can help me with my and that's why whenever she comes to Father Damien first and he's like, I can see her from a psychiatrist's point of view, she's like, no, I need you to see her from like a priest's point of view. That's like important, not just because of her daughter's situation, but because of like the status that a priest would have in such a community. It's cool. I mean, even like there's a priest at her party in the beginning or whatever, that dude, whatever we were just talking about. Whatever his name was. Like, he was there at the party to begin with because he's an important guy, because he's a priest, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a reverence there, and I think that's cool that we still have these, like, holy figures that are... Have you ever been to the Vatican?
You're talking about the one in Italy, right?
Yeah, not the one in Vegas. What do you think I'm talking about?
I was
Vatican City, Italy, yes.
My brain is so fried. I was like, I swear, if I'm thinking of the wrong place, I'm going to be oh yeah, you know, I've been to the Vatican. I bought the merchandise.
But have you been to Vatican City?
Yes, I have been to the Vatican.
Okay. That place is fucking nut. You can't tell me that place isn't just like the wildest religious shit you can imagine.
No,
like,
it's insane going through there.
Like, yeah, we have a piece of the cross here. And like,
yeah.
we have these marble statues that cry real tears at night. We don't know why. Like, that part's not real. I made that up. They do have these crazy marble statues. They've got some of those beautiful artwork. You walk in and it's like they just extorted the money out of like fucking millions of poor believers for thousands of years just to panel this ceiling with just solid gold and Jesus Christ's own blood. It's like crazy shit. There's just these huge monuments to like, it's nuts. And when you see that, you're like, yeah, that needs to be the centerpiece of like most horror movies.
Yeah.
not like as the horror part, but like as the like good witch hunter part. Honestly thought this movie did a good job of like having a realistic Catholic approach. You know what I mean? They were like trying to approach this guy for an exorcism because he's supposed to be the expert on exorcisms, and he's like, there's no expert on exorcisms.
Yeah.
He was like, nobody does exorcisms. Nobody's done that since the 1600s. We're serious, ma'am.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting how they approached that, and like even the father had to be like convinced that like, okay, yeah, this girl is not having psychological problems, she's having a demon problem.
No, I think you nailed something perfectly, because I think like the aesthetic of the church, like whether you believe in the faith or not, I mean, they have mad aesthetic going on.
Yeah.
I mean, like even the music there and
Catholics
just the visual
are cool
stuff.
As fuck. Like they got drip. You seen the Pope? He's got his own Pope mobile. Yeah.
Supreme needs to come out with Catholic robes.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely a good aesthetic, and yeah, right, it is good in horror films, because I think I find it like curious that whenever it comes to like possession and stuff like that it actually is kind of like unnerving to you specifically. And is there ever any reason why over someone like going into your house to kill you, which is still equally scary?
Right.
Yeah.
I think what's specifically about like religious-based horror, you know, or like spiritual, I guess you could say, horror, is that there's an element there, and I'm memeing a lot about the Catholic stuff, but it really is like it's like an ancient institution that's full of ritual and knowledge and things that have been abandoned and things that have been integrated. You know, and it has secrets and it has hierarchy and stuff. There are things that like we mortal may not know or whatever, or that are described to us. And there's always an element of like, you know, there's a higher power, but we don't know much about it. You know what I mean? And so I think that element, not just regarding Catholic Church, but regarding any sort of like spiritual horror, is like just there's like an element of the unknown that could expose itself. Like, you know, supernatural stuff might be real. Who knows? Like, you know, I'm watching Ghost Hunters on TV. That shit's probably not real when they're talking to the ghost of Adolf Hitler in Berlin. I remember that one.
Wait, they actually did? I thought you were just memeing.
No, that was like a special they teased for like months when I was a kid. They were like, we're going to Hitler's castle to talk to... And there was an episode of like Ghost Hunters or something. Yeah, no, I mean, like, that kind of stuff. No, I don't really believe it. But like spooky stories that are like... Because like a murderer breaking into your house and stuff, that's scary. But realistically, I think my rational mind is able to take over a little bit and be like, what would a killer want with me? You know, a lot of these movies is like, I'm not going to a camp in the middle of the fucking... I'm not, like, when I'm in those when I'm in a scenario where I'm in a place that's weird or like remote or whatever, then I start getting scared by those sorts of thoughts. When I'm sitting in my house, is Jason gonna break in and slash me up? No, you know. I'm not scared of that. But whenever I'm watching a movie about like the occult, the mystery, something that like because the setting of all those movies is like, this isn't real. Everybody knows that, but that it is. You know what I mean? And it always happens to somebody that like didn't necessarily ask for it. Like there's nothing Reagan did in this movie that asked to be possessed or whatever. It just like happened, and then you're fucked. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that's scary. And probably I buried sort of the main point, but I think the main thing that makes it scary for me is that they always happen in your house too. You know, like
No.
other horror movies is like they're in a different location and they stumble upon some evil or whatever. But like the home is where you're supposed to be safe. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, whenever it's like strikes close to home and you can't just like lock the door and keep them out. You know, it's not something you can fight. It's like ethereal. It's like that kind of stuff makes it more scary for me.
No, I think that's a solid point overall there, because I didn't know, because I know with me, I'm not, it's, as Michael Scott would say, I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious.
Yeah.
That's kind of like where I'm at specifically, because you know, growing up and everything, I went through like a phase where I'm just like, there's nothing, you know, type deal, just kind of like denying everything and stuff. But as I've gotten older and just started pondering more about life, like, I feel like there's just too many instances where if you're by yourself, especially, and you're just kind of taking in the quiet or like darkness and stuff like that, like, it could be your mind playing tricks, but I feel like there's just places or moments in time where you just feel like a presence of something.
Right.
Like, it's just one of those things that's like, oh, you could just shrug it off as whatever. But I think that's what possession to me kind of disturbs me most, because I do feel like, again, there is like a higher power of sorts. And, you know, there's just so much of the unknown we don't know about, which I think also kind of makes possession scary. And I guess in a sense that's what makes killers kind of scary as well, like not knowing why they're wanting to kill specifically there. But something especially about demons, because like if there's like a brutal kind of like killer running after you, you know, there's a chance you can like stumble your way out and just like run away and do stuff.
Sure.
But whenever it's possession, just like right there, there's not a lot of options you can do there if you are ever encountered by a supernatural force. So I think that's what definitely makes it a lot more scary. Because, I mean, spoilers for the Exorcist film, there's no Scooby-Doo chase scene where Reagan's running away from the demon. It's just kind of there.
Right.
Yeah, immediately. So I think...
and there's not even really, like, Reagan's not chasing people down and killing them
Oh,
either.
no.
You know what I mean?
I think that makes it scarier almost.
Right.
Because it's just like...
She's just like there and they're trying to save this child, and it's like a dangerous thing to do.
No, it definitely makes it a lot more disconcerting there. It's just kind of, you know, because I think if she was chasing people and stuff, I think it would definitely take away the unsettledness of it there. So I think it's definitely effective that for the most part you just see Reagan chilling in her room there. Of course, it's a chilling
yeah.
Well,
she's making a lot of noise.
I don't know, she could be chilling. It was pretty frosty in there.
Cold. She liked it pretty cold in
there.
But
yeah, I was just mostly curious on your take whenever it came to it, because I know with me I understand why I'm scared of it, but with you I was curious on what you were scared of specifically.
Yeah. I don't think possession is necessarily the scariest thing for me. But it is like ghosts. So if we get into ghost territory, that's where I start getting spooked.
Gotcha. Yeah. For me, it's definitely just kind of more of the supernatural, especially whenever it comes to angelic or demonic-like beings there. I think just that idea does kind of disturb me a bit there. So... that's why I was very surprised that by the end I'm feeling pretty good. You know, good.
I feel like I could go to sleep tonight just fine. We'll see what happens when the lights are
off. Oh yeah, that's going to be the real kicker there. You know, I would say I would grab a cross, but after watching this film, I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure if I want to do that.
Didn't really help us.
No. And we might talk about more of that in the spoilers. But is there any last tidbits you want to throw about The Exorcist before we get towards that spoilers?
No. I used to sleep with a cross when I was young.
I remembered that.
Yeah, after watching Sixth Sense. Because I had one in my drawer because I was raised very religious. I didn't have a crucifix, which is probably, I don't know, maybe that would have worked better. But I did have a cross.
All right, yeah, you had the shape. You had the shape going on.
And it was made of wood, so if I needed to carve it into a stake to kill any vampires, I would have been double.
Yeah, just all set. Just gotta sharpen that boy up.
I was also scared of vampires because I had a book that was like
really
cool facts or whatever, and like mixed in with these cool facts was like facts about supernatural stuff, like facts or whatever.
Yeah,
it was like vampires were whatever, and are found in all these cultures, and I was like, oh, well, so vampires are real, and so I was scared of those too when I was a kid.
No, it's funny how like if you hear or read stuff as a kid, how that stuff sticks with you and kind of leaves a permanent kind of fear there for the most part. Like you may get over it because I'm sure you're not quite as worried about vampires at night as you were previously.
Can't say I've worried about a vampire in a little while.
But it's definitely good overall that I finally got around to watching The Exorcist, and didn't let kind of my imagination run wild on how terrifying this film was going to be. But Aaron, tell me, what's the score, bud?
Man, this is a hard one. Because it wasn't really what I expected. I don't know if that's good or bad. I do think it was a really good film overall. I have positive feelings about it. The acting was well. Practical effects stand the test of time. I think the cinematography was good. There's all things that were really good. I think it's a really slow burn. And I'm trying to decide if like the fact that there wasn't that much of a at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
Like makes it or breaks it. I want to rate it high objectively, but I honestly don't feel like this is one of those films that's gonna like plot-wise stick with me. You know what I mean? But character-wise and some of the performance and some of the scenes, I do think are gonna stick with me for a while. So I think I'm gonna give this one like an. Fuck it. I'll give it like a 9. Yeah.
Wow.
I was about to say 8.5.
Wow. Holy smokes.
And it's weird. I give it a 9, and I'm not like super enthusiastic about it because I feel like I didn't love the film overall, but I do feel like it affected me. And that's sort of what I'm giving it points for. And I feel like it was really quality at almost every like indicator that I can point to. So like I feel like rating it lower than like a 7 or 8 would be criminal, and I do think like some of the performances were just so stellar. Linda's in particular playing Reagan was so good, and some of those moments of her possession are never going to leave my mind, for better or for worse. So even though it's like disturbing, I think just the mark of good art is that it sticks with you. Some of my favorite like paintings, like physical paintings, are like sort of disturbing to look at, but they stick with me. Like Kronos eating his son, or like Guernica or something. Like these sorts of these paintings that are sort of horrific to look at, or they end up being some of my favorite. So I would say the same thing about this. I don't know that I would like be quick to call it my favorite, but I do think there are a lot of moments that are going to stick with me for a long time, and that it was a good film overall. And I feel like there's not a lot to fault it. So yeah, I'll give it a 9.
Well, that's definitely surprising.
I don't know if I was to rate it on like a pure enjoyment scale, which I think is what you rate things on a little bit more.
Oh yeah,
I would probably rate it more like a 7 or something. But just like trying to rate it from like objective factors of what someone else might watch this and rate. I give it like a 9. It's a really well crafted film.
Oh yeah, no, and I think you're definitely right about how the way I critique stuff, because I do try to be fair whenever it comes to critical stuff and personal like stuff. Because I mean, there's films that I think like. For instance, the movie E.T. People like heralded it as a classic and stuff, and I like it fine, but I just don't get excited watching it and stuff. It's like I look and I'm like, okay, that's well done, effects, well done story, but it rates fairly low for me just because it's like one of those films I'm like, I could say I like it, but do I want to watch it again? Overall, it's like, no, probably not.
Right,
and
like,
so
this is one I probably don't want to watch again.
No, and that's kind of like where I'm at specifically, which is why my score is going to be lower. I do struggle on the placement of it overall, on what I do with it. Probably, as sad as it sounds, I probably would give this one a 5 out of 10, maybe almost a 6, because again, there is stuff to definitely like about this film. Like, Linda Blair, once again, I mentioned, is great, and there is, like, a lot of great moments set up. I mean, especially, like, towards the end, whenever it's just two priests against Reagan there. Like, it's definitely a lot of great moments that I can appreciate, but overall, like, my overall investment in the story whenever it came to the characters and story, I felt like it just never truly paid off, which I'm sure that's what they were going for, is more ambiguous type deal, not like a clear cut dry thing specifically. But overall, the film, like, I mean, I would be close to rating it like a 6, because I think that's what I rated Nosferatu there. But with Nosferatu, there's definitely like a lot of moments where I'm like, oh man, that was like so good. And this film was close to doing it. So, I mean, it's like 5.5, I would say, out of generous. But I think you're definitely right. There is shots that look amazing. I even complimented the foliage of the falling leaves and stuff. I think it's perfect. And while I don't see anything wrong from a narrative perspective, whenever it came to like being gripping to me and stuff and having like my attention.
Yeah.
Because the film's like about a little over 2 hours long, and it definitely kind of felt like a 2-hour film where I was just sitting there like, okay, and stuff. But
right. And I think that's where I would knock the 1 point off, really. It's just that there's not a lot that's excitable about it. There's not a lot that really hooks you in. It is like sort of a, I want to say a chore, because it's not a chore. It's an enjoyable watch, but it is slow.
Yeah.
I mean, I 100% feel you there. And the plot is not like super interesting. It's like it's well paced, and you get to, you know, I mean, it's slow, but it's still well paced between scenes, and you get to like sort of chug along and understand why they're doing what they're doing. But yeah, it's not like it's not excitable, and I feel like you don't leave the movie feeling good either.
No, and that's just like the weird thing for me, because, you know, I'm not like one of those like, oh, I need like popcorn flicks and stuff like that, because I can watch like crazy films with like a story and stuff, but it's just whenever it comes to the rating, like whenever it comes to critical and bias and stuff, it definitely plays a factor into it. And I probably do lean more into bias because, you know, with film specifically, it's just like, I want to be sure like I'm invested and it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm watching this. But that's where the weird thing, because 5 out of 10 for me isn't still bad and stuff.
Yeah,
that's
average,
usually, I mean, that's where I place E.T. Like, you know, it's like towards the E.T. range. You know what I mean? Exorcist, E.T., yeah. You know, it starts with an E, ends with a T. Yeah. But I definitely understand where you're getting the 9 out of 10, though. It's not like one of those like, I don't understand what you're talking about.
Excuse me.
Oh my god, don't you dare throw Pitch Perfect quotes my way. I hate that movie. Now, you want to talk about a movie I hate. It's Pitch Perfect.
Is it because you are Pitch Perfect?
No. I am Pitch Perfect.
Coale is
Pitch
Pitch Perfect.
That has nothing to do with it, though. Pitch Perfect is just a trash film. Come at me, Pitch Perfect, peeps.
I think it because it got over popular for what it was. It was like a dumb comedy, you know what I mean? But then, like the time it came out, like people were watching it like 5-6 times.
Oh my gosh,
like my close friends, they were like, "Let's watch Pitch Perfect again," and I was like, "Okay." Okay. Anna Kendrick, very funny. Rebel Wilson, very funny. That guy that looks like my friend Tate, very funny.
Yeah, Adam Devine.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, okay.
And my friend Tate looks exactly like Adam Devine.
So fun. Does he sound like him?
Not really, but not like not. You know, I mean, he sounds like a white male of his stature. Yeah, they look remarkably similar. So much so that I have been with him, and people have been like, "You look like Adam."
That is so funny. But no, that film's a 1 out of 10. Come fight me.
It's not that bad.
No, it's that bad.
It's funny. It's funny in parts. There's lines. There's some good stuff in there. It's like not a good film. Like
I think the thing is like I just don't find a lot of the jokes that funny.
No, a lot of them are pretty cringe. A lot of the musical numbers are
I don't
cringe.
like the renditions they do. Again, I like Rebel Wilson and Anna Kendrick's pretty good.
I love Anna Kendrick.
But
she's funnier in person than she is in movies.
I just don't care about anything. I mean, and Adam Devine, he is hysterical. He was about the only thing I really liked in the films because they just were like the character. Oh my gosh, we're on a Pitch Perfect rage. You know, you're the white knight of it, and I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna trash it.
I'm just like, I'm defending. I haven't seen it in a long time, so I couldn't give it a rating, but it's a below below 5 out of 10 for sure, but it's not a 1.
For me, it's a 1. Maybe not on a technical.
Well, I don't even know about technical. Maybe it is on a technical. I feel like I would get more enjoyment out of it than a 1.
I don't know.
A 1 is like High School Musical 4 off-brand movie. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Like, it just depends. Maybe it's a 2. The second Pitch Perfect, that's a 1. You can't change my mind because that permeates my skull.
It probably
Maybe
was.
that's why I hate the first one.
I've never saw
Because the first one I was like, okay, that was dumb. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And then the second one worse. Anyways, let's get this back on track here before I bust a blood vessel talking about Pitch Perfect.
Bust a nut the more we talk about Anna
That being
Kendrick.
no.
Holla at me. Give me a call, Anna.
Stop hitting on the celebrities.
They don't listen. Who's gonna tell them? Come on. My mom who listens to this? No. She might actually. She's trying to hook me up with someone, I'm sure.
Oh,
Any grandkids? Have you talked to that nice Anna Kendrick lady? Mom, she's on the TV. Well, that shouldn't be an excuse to stop you. You're never gonna get pictures like that, Aaron.
Anna
Anyway.
Kendrick, I think Aaron wants to hook up with you.
Holler at
Make TV children happen.
Yeah.
Um,
I want to get married, have your children. Nothing just casual like that.
yeah, just totally casual. Exorcist.
The Exorcist.
Even though I rated it low, I still think it's definitely worth a watch. There's definitely a lot of stuff that's good to watch about the film. It's just one of those films that I'm like, I don't know if I would, that it gripped me the entire way through and stuff. But the moments that were good, really stinking good.
For sure.
So I'm going to jump to spoilers here before someone else derails whatever's going on. You know what? Do you want me to do a spoiler first or you
Spoil
first?
it.
Okay,
You always
okay.
give it to me, and I want you to spoil something for once.
So the one scene that I would say is definitely going to stick with me, that disturbed me a lot, is when, I mean, there's a lot of scenes, but it's just how sexual Reagan becomes as the devil, just with that male voice. Because I mean, there's the one scene where she goes, "Fuck me," to like an adult there, and that's like one thing. Like, okay, that's pretty.
She's like thrusting.
Yeah, thrusting her pelvis towards the way. But the one scene that's going to kind of scar me a tiny bit
is with the one with the mom.
Whenever she walks in, she has the cross and is masturbating with it to the point where she's bleeding.
Yep.
And then while the mom's trying to pull across the way, she grabs the mom's head and says, "Lick me, lick me." I was like, oh my god.
Yep. It's
No.
pretty bad.
Oh, it's like, that scene scarred me more than anything else. Like, it was scary in the sense of like, spooky. But no, it's just like, oh my god, horrific.
Yeah, like absolutely grotesque. And
Yeah.
I mean, it really paints the picture. Just like the train, I can't even think of the word. Like the transition from one to the other is just like so 180.
Oh my
It's
god.
like, I'm a sweet little 12-year-old girl, and then just like the evilest like Damon you could imagine. Just
It's
raunchy and. Yeah, I mean, every time somebody's in the room, he's like, "Suck my cock."
oh my gosh, it's so deserving, deserving. Oh my gosh, disturbing. I can't even enunciate because thinking about it, how sexual the devil is, if it even is a devil or like a demon. I think it's a demon.
Well, I mean,
think.
yeah,
they
it's
don't
hard to
say
tell because, because the priest asks her, and he's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "I'm the devil himself." Or whatever. And that's like her thing, but then there's like a bunch of different voices. She's like, "Your mom's here too."
Yeah, it's so disturbing. Like the scariest stuff that happens is just the stuff she says. I mean, granted, masturbating with a cross is also pretty
crucifix. No, Jesus is there.
Oh god.
There's a difference.
Okay, yeah. No, see, that's worse.
Exactly.
I think crucifix is worse than a cross. It's definitely like, but it's so funny because the film is so slow and everything.
Yeah.
That moments like that, it's not like in your face 24/7 moving forward and stuff.
And they sort of blend in those moments too, where it's like, yeah, it's like disturbing, but it's not like, I don't know, it's not like they just like shock you with it in the sense where it's just like, it's calm and then all of a sudden it's like, it builds up to those moments, but it's like they're still shocking just by the content that you're watching on the screen, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, it's horribly shocking, and I think it definitely adds to the overall uncomfortableness of the film, which I think it's important. I mean, you're afraid of this demon,
right?
For sure. I mean, if I had that demon like possess someone like my wife in the house and stuff, it would be scary. But the fact it's a 12-year-old girl and we get to see her act normal at the beginning,
right.
it is just definitely very disturbing to see overall. So those scenes are gonna kind of scar me.
And that's why I give the actress so much props, because like, holy shit, the kind of things you had to act out as that role.
I know.
I can't imagine how she processed all that. I mean, that's wow. I mean, yeah. When you think about like tough roles that an actress or an actor might have, generally speaking, like I've seen a rape scene or two, and that's just horribly traumatic.
Yeah.
And I know that that leaves an impression on the people that play those roles too. I just can't imagine what it's like to be that actress that had to play that demon. It's absolutely just insane.
No, it's insane, but also I feel like the film is definitely made more effective because of it. I never felt like it was unnecessary,
right? And that was the other thing I give props to, is because a lot of times in some of these movies, especially in horror movies in general, they'll just be like, here's some titties, here's some sexual violence, here's some whatever, and some of it seems frivolous because they have like the R rating or whatever, but this one was definitely like baked in the story. Like you could tell why the mother was so horrified. It's because everybody that's around this thing is horrified, and they're all trying to solve it, you know what I mean, trying to get the demon out of this girl, because like the trauma is real, and you get to experience that as an audience member, not just convinced by the good acting of the actors involved.
Oh yeah,
but like as somebody that's witnessing these horrible things, they don't shy away from it.
No, and I think like the actors and actresses do an amazing job when it comes to just recoiling in fear. Right. Like you could tell they're afraid of what's going on, I don't think
it would have had as much of a convincing punch if they didn't have some of those like overtly sexual moments in there.
Oh, for sure.
Because you could tell there's all these like adult doctor men that are trying to like help this kid, and you could tell on their faces and their actions and everything that they're just repulsed as well, just like that they've never seen shit like this before.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, this is real. This isn't like a fun, friendly, let's solve this case of crazy over here. Let me, give her an old lobotomy or whatever. It's like, no, this is a child that like kills people and yells profanities, and like, I think they needed that to be like, to have that gravity. There's a lot of gravity.
Yeah, and not only that, like the doctors are afraid, but even the priest, like, I mean, obviously, like Damien already has his own doubts in the faith and everything, but whenever it comes to Father Lancaster, like doing that specifically, even he's starting to get a little unnerved. Like whenever it's just like, okay, all right, it's not going quite as smooth as I hope.
Right. And he ends up fucking dying.
Oh, yeah, like, absolutely gets choked out.
Yeah. And that's where I think is cool, and the biggest spoiler I want to talk about is how they did weave some of that story together. Because it starts out really slow, but it also starts out kind of discombobulated, and since it's like, why did I watch all this Iraq footage? Like, and then they go into the story, and it's like, why do I care about Damien and the fact that his mom's dying? Like, why do I give a fuck about this? Or that he's losing his religion. It doesn't really come together until the middle and the end, whenever you're like, okay, the guy from the beginning of the movie, that's the father that's there, Lancaster, with Damon. And then, like, him losing his mother is important because he feels bad about it, and somehow this possessed child knows about it too. And so that's sort of like one of his first clues. It's like, okay, this girl is possessed. Seeing all those things kind of woven together was actually... I thought they did really well with that, and it resolved well too, because like Damon was feeling bad about killing his mother, right? He felt like he wasn't there whenever he needed to be, and she died, right? And so then he leaves because he's upset because he listened to this girl's the demon taunt him about this. He was upset. He leaves the room. Lancaster's in the room. And because he left, because he wasn't there when he was supposed to be, Lancaster died too. Just like his mom. So the trauma all cycles back again. And then, he decides he's going to not let this kid die. In fact, that's the last thing he said before he entered that room. Because the mom was like, how's it going? And he was like, it's still going. And she was like, is my daughter going to die? And that's what prompted him to get back in the room. Because he was feeling bad about his mom too. And he's like, no, like, she's absolutely not going to die. Gets in there, sees Father Lancaster dead. He's like, oh shit. So he takes in the demon himself. He's like, give it to me. He like starts beating the shit out of this child.
Yeah, oh my
which
God.
is funny to see, but like also like at this point in the movie, you're like, yeah, beat the shit out of that.
Yeah.
He takes the demon out of her into himself. And then you see it like glow in his eyes, and then he just like takes control of his body for a second and jumps out the window to kill himself with a demon in it. Crazy ending.
Yeah.
And they foreshadowed all those little bits, even with the jumping out the window and dying, because that's what happened to the drunk director dude or whatever, Burke.
Yeah.
Before is that he was pushed out of a window with his head twisted or whatever, and they found that weird little statue thing by him. So it was like all those pieces that they were laying out the whole time put together in one little scene. I thought they did a really good job with that.
No, I think you raise a lot of points that I wouldn't have thought about too much, just like the foreshadowing of like losing mom, then losing the father type deal. Not actual father, but like Catholic
Priest,
father.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard to say, but I can't really say I was expecting them to get rid of the demon in that form.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think they did either. He was like,
oh yeah.
It was just like kind of, here's the plan, I guess.
I'm just also kind of surprised the demon would want to take over the father specifically, unless it's because the body was dying.
Well, I think they kind of teased that too, right? Because in the beginning, when he's first meeting with this child, before he believes that she's actually possessed, and he's like talking to her as a psychiatrist, and and the demons are like talking to him. She's like preparing for an exorcist or whatever, and he's like, oh, you want that? And he's like, then we get to meet or whatever. So they kind of teased that, I think, initially, because like he wouldn't mind getting out if like that means he gets into this priest too or whatever. But yeah, and then also their ultimate downfall is teased because whenever they play that tape backwards or whatever, you hear some of those voices are saying, fear the priest, while like the main like devil one or whatever is like, fuck him, and they're like, no, fear the priest. So yeah, I think there's like a lot of interesting layers that they put in. Like that's kind of what I was mentioning when I was pointing to like, it's a really well crafted movie. I feel like it's a well thought through movie.
No, I definitely think it's like a good thought movie, which again, this was based on a novel and stuff, so I'm not sure how close it was. It's just one of those things that like, I guess for me, I wasn't quite expecting like, okay, the only way to get rid of this demon is if I take him in and then kill myself, which again, I don't see any problem with that. I can see the logic behind it. I'm not like, why didn't you try harder?
Right. Well,
get a bigger crucifix,
bro.
The
interesting thing is like, I don't know that was his plan when he went into the room. Like I don't think it wasn't. Like I think he just like was shocked and upset by the death of the father after seeing the death of his mother or whatever, or missing the death of his mother. Angrily, like starts beating the shit out of his child and wants to do anything to get it out. So he's like invites the demon into himself. I don't think he's even thinking about killing it at that point. He's just like, get the demon in me so it's out of her. And then as soon as it's in him, he just like jumps. He's like, I gotta kill myself.
Yeah.
He's like, just like jumps out the window. Like, I don't think he wanted to live with himself any longer anyway.
Yeah.
So there's like that piled on top of like, the realization of like, I can save her. I can end this by like dying while the demon's in me.
No.
Just for a split second. I feel like it was just like a sudden decision.
It was definitely a disturbing scene just to kind of see him fling himself out the window down the stairs, and then you just see his body, and it's like realistically bloody there. And then whenever his friend comes up and he's like, do you repent for all your past sins? And you see like the body is twitching and stuff specifically. That was also disturbing and stuff to see, because again, you don't hear anything at all. But that's the one thing I'm kind of glad with this horror film, that I mean, obviously this is well before the horror franchise kind of became kind of the sequel bait kind of thing specifically, which there are sequels to The Exorcist.
I have heard it. I'm like, I feel like they just have to tell a whole new story. Like,
no.
Like if they touch this one again, like that came to a conclusion.
Yeah. No, and I'm happy that it's like because I even told you whenever like Reagan and Chris are moving away and they drive away and you see the back of Reagan's head, I just made the joke. I'm like, this is the part where her head turns around to look at him, which I think definitely would have taken away any sort of like art thing specifically, because it does end sort of abruptly, but not at the same time, where it's just his friend looking at the steps where Damien was at, and then it just plays the music, it cuts out. I think that's a good way to end it there specifically, but it is one of those like, oh, well, I guess it's done. That's
one of those things. I feel like it ends the same way it enters. It just kind of like fades in, fades out. You know what I mean? There's nothing like excitable. There's not like a big
yeah, for sure. Which I was surprised just more how nuanced the film was whenever it came to it, which I think definitely makes it more effective and probably what really instilled fear in people and stuff. It wasn't kind of more fantastical. It was like more grounded, and because it was a lot of unnatural stuff going on, just added to the overall fear of it. The one thing I will have to ask, because obviously you've picked up more stuff than I have the first time watching it. Usually it takes me like a while. Like some films I'm like, okay, got everything in this film. Other times it's like, okay, but they don't ever explain why she's possessed. I mean, they show the artifact there and that it somehow got to America, but they never explicitly show why she's possessed. I mean, it's not like one of those things like, oh look, I found an antique, I'm going to take it home with me.
They don't show that moment. I'm just as confused as you are.
Yeah, but it shows like the artifact at the bottom of the stairs there, so
there's the artifact, and then she also had that necklace, that little pendant thing that was like, if you remember in the beginning, that's the coin that he was looking at, Lancaster. That they dug up in Iraq, and he was like, that's not from that era or whatever. How those got there beats me. You know what I mean? I don't know if the pendant was off of the father's neck or what, but I don't know how that statue got there and how it got in the hands of Burke or whoever who fell off the window.
It was just definitely one of the more kind of scenes where I'm like, they don't really explain why. Which, I mean, obviously real life exorcisms you never hear like, oh, they were digging around in a tomb or whatever and then bam, it happened. It's just normal life. But usually with stories, I'm kind of more awaiting like an explanation sometimes, but some films obviously don't have that explanation, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything on why exactly she got possessed.
There might have been a line or something in there that we just both missed. Who knows? But,
and I feel like
it wasn't explicit for sure.
No, and I feel like obviously ambiguity does not dock points for me. I mean, like The Shining doesn't answer a whole lot of stuff of why it's going on, but I feel like it just also plays into the fact of if there is ambiguity, like how invested you are in figuring it out, or if it just kind of goes over you. Because that's the thing. The only two names I could confidently tell you at the end of the film was Reagan and Damien. Those are like the two names. But again, they're probably said the most, which is why it sticks, because the rest of the people, they don't really agree each other by name too much. They're just like talking. So I think that was kind of like the thing specifically that kind of bothered me, is the fact that whenever it came to the film, because it doesn't explain like everything, which I don't think it needs to. I think that's the whole thing about the exorcism. You never know who exactly the demon is. It probably has something to do with like a demon sort of creature they found in Iraq, since there's that one scene where Reagan's like bent over backwards and it shows the silhouette of the statue.
Yeah, the statue that they showed in the beginning.
It does make me curious about like if I missed any points specifically, like oh, if you pay close attention to that. So it's like, I think I mean, you said it perfectly about this film overall. Like, I want to rate it higher and stuff, but if it came down to just like my personal rating of it overall, it ends up being lower, because technical wise, it outbeats my enjoyment there. So I usually try to meet in the middle there overall, because like enjoyment wise, there's not like a whole lot of gripping stuff, but there's a lot of technical stuff that I'm like, man, that was good.
And this is why I think this is one of those films where like, and I think there's multiple ways to rate something too, which is why I'm glad we have two like kind of different rating scales. and why sometimes I will also explain like I did not enjoy this movie as much as I enjoyed other nines that I've probably given, like Alien or The Shining or something. Where it's like, yeah, like I really enjoyed those movies more because they were like intended for me to enjoy them more.
Yes.
But this is a great example of like how art is not always enjoyable. You know what I mean?
For sure.
But it can still be satisfying to watch because you have just watched something that was really well made. But yeah, it doesn't leave you feeling good in any ways, and not just because like it had a unhappy ending of sorts where some people died, even though Reagan does get redeemed. That's not even really what's like weighing down on me. It's just like the horrors I have seen or whatever. But I think, and because that's by design, it's like gets a lot more points for me.
Yeah. And I actually we didn't mention this, but on the DVD copy I have, it actually had like a short little like intro by William Friedkin who kind of talks about the overall meaning of the film, like how you could kind of see both angles and stuff, like whether it's just the world is a dark, cruel place or that good wins out in the end. And I was thinking about it while watching the movie specifically, because I mean, The Exorcist is definitely not a film like, oh yeah, why don't we kick back and watch The Exorcist,
right. Just something light for the evening.
Yeah, because I honestly was kind of expecting more of that with how many people have talked about watching The Exorcist.
Right.
And that's the thing with it. It's definitely not a film that's like traumatically scarring me. I'm like, man, I don't want to watch that again.
You know what I would compare this to? If you're a literature reader, this is like Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. Have you ever read Lolita?
No, definitely not.
If you're not into literature, you don't need to watch it. Just like, I don't feel like if you're not into film or you're not into horror, you probably don't need to watch this one because it will disturb you. Like, there are things about Lolita that I still remember having read that book. It is like a very gripping, incredibly well-told story. It is about a pedophile from the narrative of a pedophile.
Oh, Jesus.
And it's not fun.
No.
But it's really well written.
No.
So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, am I going to just like casually recommend somebody pops this movie in with some popcorn? No. Is this like a really good piece of art? Yeah, it is. Like, so that's exactly what I've compared to. If anybody reads books and is familiar with Lolita, that's like a challenging read in the sense that, like, not that the words are hard or whatever, but that, like, the subject matter is really difficult, but is still so engaging because of how well it's written. And, like, this is the same kind of thing, but in movie form. Like, this is still engaging for how well it's crafted, but it's not like fun, spooky campfire story time.
Yeah,
it's like horrors that we all witness together.
No, that's definitely kind of how I feel about it. Granted, I have seen and read much more darker stuff than what The Exorcist has, which, is good for me because I don't get my kicks off watching dark stuff. Not that I'm opposed to it or anything. I'm usually up for watching anything, but it definitely does kind of make it like, okay, like that sort of level there. But I mean, Aaron is right in the fact that this is a very well-made movie. I never felt like there was anything that just was bad about it specifically. And for like how, like, that's the thing too. They were fairly simple. They didn't try to do any crazy effects because, like, one of the things that, there's two different versions of the movie. Like, the version you've never seen. Apparently, there's one scene they added where Reagan is spider crawling backwards.
Really?
Yeah, which, to be honest, like, I've read from a lot of people, they're like, it takes me out of the film because it just looks preposterous seeing her do a spider climb. And so because of that, I feel like with how close they were to doing crazy stuff, but never going super over the top. I mean, the projectile vomiting was pretty crazy, but it was never like, Evil Dead where it's just like fire hydrant.
That's kind of what I was expecting.
Yeah,
I think
me
I've
too.
Seen too many parodies probably of The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't ever get that intense. It was very intense, but it never got that ridiculous.
Yeah, which I think plays to the film's strength because, again, it's supposed to be based in reality, and just, having it go super fantastical, I think just would have taken it out for me overall. Right. But, man, whenever it comes to William Friedkin, I was just thinking about this. I was going to ask, in your opinion, because he says like, oh, you'll see what we're going for. Do you feel like good triumphed in the end of The Exorcist? Because it doesn't end on a happily ever after moment,
Right.
but it also doesn't end in like everything's bad moment.
I mean, yes, I would say that it does, just because that phrasing, like, good triumphs in the end, implies that, like, a lot of bad stuff happened. A lot of bad stuff did happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, 3 people died, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, like, Damien sacrificed himself for the greater good or whatever in the end. And so, like, yeah, the 2 priests died, but Reagan was saved, and the demons were expelled, presumably forever.
Yeah, you would hope so anyways.
Right. So, like, good did triumph in the end, in the sense that, like, Reagan's fine, and the demon's gone. Yeah, so, like, all's well that ends well, I
yeah,
suppose.
that's kind of the overall tone I got of it, because it's a very bittersweet ending, because, Reagan is saved, and hopefully is going to be better off and everything, but at the same point, a lot of horrific stuff still happened. They're going to be traumatized by it. But I mean, even though they say that Reagan doesn't remember any of it, which is good,
Right?
But I mean, the mom has to live like, okay, we went through like this horrible thing, and then the friend of Damien's gonna have to deal with the fact that he lost his friend who wasn't even that strong in the faith there. So it's like also bittersweet for him that he felt like he never truly got to say his goodbye. It's definitely a lot of bittersweet stuff, but overall I think it makes it definitely effective film, because even though I don't view it as like, one of my top 10 horror films and stuff, I still think, I mean, it's definitely a horror classic in my eyes. There, kind of like in the same Nosferatu is like, obviously enjoyment wise, it's like, there's some, but I definitely would rank The Exorcist up there as definitely a classic film that people should watch. And for people that are a little nervous, kind of like Aaron and I were, I'd probably say it's not as bad as you think.
No, it's really not.
I mean, there's definitely a couple scenes that will make you question that statement. But was there any other tidbits you wanted to touch on in a spoiler kind of thing?
None that come to mind right now. Yeah, I feel like we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, no, I definitely think we did also. I feel like there's a lot of good discussion, and I think you are definitely right that it's good we kind of have 2 different criticism styles and stuff. I mean, that's what made like Siskel and Ebert kind of like good, is just having those contrasting points there just to compare notes to. So not saying we're Siskel and Ebert level.
We're better.
Yes, we are. Hell yeah.
Yeah. If only our viewership would.
I know. I know, right?
We're underground.
Fun fact about Roger Ebert: he's famous for slamming horror films. Like, he hates horror films.
I thought you were gonna say slamming horse. He's famous for just plowing.
That's how he went out, boys.
2 hookers on his dick. Don't ask me how he did it. Nose full of coke.
Oh my god.
God bless, Roger.
Oh, all right. So, okay, we're. I think we have now kind of covered The Exorcist here. So, I had to think about this next film we're going to be watching and just really think about it. I think it's time we kind of went back to
the future. Back to the future. Back to the future.
I mean, we are going back to the future, but not our future. It's still in the past.
Okay.
So technically from 1973 we are going to the future, just not our future.
Gotcha.
There.
I got the science.
And it's a let's see, how do I describe this? There's a little doll runs around and is good friends with this little boy. And this doll has like some red hair, overalls.
Chucky.
Yeah, it is Chucky. It is Chucky and Dee Dee.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's another one I don't know a whole lot about, except for just like the pop culture influence.
Yeah, that's why I thought it'd be a good one just to kind of look at specifically, because Chucky's pretty iconic, but I bet you don't even know the title of the movie he's from.
If it's not Chucky, I sure don't.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode, guys, because on the next episode of Poppin the Scary, we're going to be Poppin the Scary with Child's Play. Woo! I'm glad I did that in one take and didn't have to edit it multiple times.
Yeah!
Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube, Castbox, or iTunes platforms to stay up to date when new episodes drop. To see what Aaron and I are up to, check out our respective Twitter accounts. For me, it is @ColeKirkVA, and for Aaron, it is @AnimalGameDev. Thank you all so much for listening to our podcast. We'll speak to you all again next time when we're Poppin the Scary.